Alright guys, so Blizzard have just dropped the PTR for Phase 4 of Season of Discovery, and there is an immense amount of new content and changes available. Firstly, we know that Molten Core is going to be reworked into 3 different difficulties. There's an NPC that gives you the option to select the heat level. He is a Hydraxian warlord, so many have speculated that the difficulty levels will be tied to the reputation within Molten Core, meaning you get more rep, you unlock more difficulties. Blizzard have confirmed that there will be new reputation rewards for vanilla Phase 1 reputations, like for instance Argent Dawn and the Timbermore. It'll be interesting to see if Molten Core will have the seasonal mastery mechanics or something totally new. I hope they do. I think people are very on the fence about going back to play Phase 4 for Molten Core because, let's be honest, it's a pretty basic raid, and not many people want to go back into Molten Core again, especially the original version where there's like 2 mechanics. There's also a new world event called the Blackrock Mountain event. Well, it might be called something else. All that we know is it's on a 2-hour timer, and when you hover over the timer it says defend against the minions of Ragnaros. The lava in this location has also had a graphical update, and there's something about the volcano exploding, so who knows what that could be. It might be some kind of PvE event, perhaps a horde survival event, but it could also be a PvP event, or maybe a mixture of the two. But my educated guess is that it will be some kind of event where you have to survive waves of enemies and defend a fortress. That is something that they haven't done yet. And people really did not like the Nightmare Incursion event, so they would definitely have to do something very different to that. It'll be interesting to see whether this is going to be an endgame only event or something that can be used to level up, because I think a lot of players didn't like how Nightmare Incursions cheapened the leveling journey. World bosses will now be instants to give people a better chance to take them down and experience those fights. We saw an element of this on the PTR for the test boss test work. We got teleported to an instance version of Searing Gorge, so maybe there'll be an instance field around where the world boss spawns in the area that they are in. I don't think they needed to do this, to be honest. I mean, world bosses are a big part of a social MMO element that we love about vanilla. Jesus Christ, vanilla. Although, to be fair, in my entire time playing Classic WoW back in the day, I never got to see any world boss because they were hogged by the top guilds on the server. Personally, I think they just needed to increase the amount of times that the world bosses spawn every day to give people a better chance to actually go and take them down. Because I'm pretty sure originally they only spawned once a week. Why not have it spawn a few times a day? Because those epic PvP world boss battles, when you're trying to kill the opposite faction and then go and kill the boss, those simply are some of the most epic spectacles that you can ever see in vanilla WoW. By the way guys, if you're still leveling up your character at Alts in Season of Discovery, Cataclysm or Error, be sure to check out the Rustic Spear add-on, the fastest leveling add-on that you can get, created by world record holding speed levelers. You can find the download link to that in the description. Now interestingly, there's been quite a fundamental amount of class changes to every single class, and now some runes have become baseline. Well, to be fair, some classes have definitely had a little bit more love than others. So these are all of the class baseline changes. Let's begin with the Druid. While growth healing has been reduced by 50% and mana cost by 20%, although when you do it in Tree of Life, while growth is increased by 60%. Rake and Rip has been buffed to benefit 50% more of your attack power. Gore has an increased chance to 15 to a trigger on Mangle, and the Crusader weapon enchant can now proc for Feral while in cat form. And I'm presuming bear form too. Hunter, the melee specialist, no longer reduces base cooldown on Mongoose and Raptor Strike, but has a 30% chance to reset the cooldown on Raptor Strike. Heart of Lion is now a baseline rune, and Cobra Slayer replaces that rune. Mongo Boost now activates when an enemy dodges, and also increased damage by 40%. Kill command has actually been totally removed and replaced by Kill Shot. The Invigoration rune has been removed and replaced by a Wyvern Strike. It does 100% weapon damage and a poison effect over 6 seconds for 60% of your attack power. Chimera Shot resets the cooldown on Wyvern Strike when used on a target affected by Wyvern Sting, and the TNT rune also increases the initial damage of Explosive Trap by 50% of melee attack power, and Immolation Trap is increased by 50% of your melee attack power. The Mage's Temporal Anomaly Shield now stacks if players remain near the orb after the initial hit. Cooldown of Temporal Anomaly has actually been reduced by 30 seconds. Advanced Warding has been redesigned and now allows you to apply the Mage Armor Shield buffs to friendly targets, as well as causes your Remove Lesser Curse ability to also remove a harmful magic effect from your friendly target. Now, the Paladin has received probably the most changes out of any other class, to be honest. So, Seal of Martyrdom is no longer a rune ability, is now learned baseline. The mana return granted by Seal of Martyrdom is now based on 65% of the damage a Paladin takes from the seal, down from 133. A new rune has been added in place of Seal of Martyrdom, and that's Divine Light. Exorcism is no longer a rune ability, is now learned as baseline, and in place of that, you're going to get Aura Mastery. The Beacon of Light duration is now 1 hour. Sheath of Light no longer grants bonus healing. The damage done by Hammer of Righteousness is reduced by 50%, but Threat was increased by 100% to compensate. The bonus healing effect from critical heals has moved from the Sheath of Light rune to the Fantasticism rune. Infusion of Light has had several adjustments. Infusion of Light now increases damage and healing of Holy Shock by 50% up from 20%. Infusion of Light now reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock to 6 seconds, and Infusion of Light no longer resets the Exorcism cooldown. Art of War now applies cooldown reduction and mana cost reduction to Exorcism. Art of War now reduces remaining cooldown of Exorcism by 1 second for each critical hit, rather than fully resetting the cooldown. The Horn of Lordaeron rune has been removed and replaced with a new rune, Hallowed Ground. The Consecration now also heals party members within its area for 200% of the damage it deals to enemies. Aegis rune has been redesigned. It now requires a Rebout talent to have any effect, and it grants a 30% increased block value and now grants Rebout to the Paladin on a successful melee critical strike, as well as giving 10% chance again Rebound to the Paladin when receiving a melee crit strike. The Enlightened Judgments rune has been removed and replaced with a new rune called Malleable Protection. You can now take actions during Divine Protection, and its duration is increased by 50%, but it only reduces the damage you take by 50% instead of granting full immunity. And you now also get Avenging Wrath as a baseline. Priests only get one baseline change. Now Void Plague has been moved from boots to the chest slot. Now Rogue have many new baseline poisons, which is pretty cool. They've got Sebaceous Poison, a poison effect that applies an armor debuff, basically equivalent to Sunder Armor. We have a Numbing Poison. This applies an attack speed debuff, roughly equivalent to Thunderclap. A poison that applies an attack power reduction, equivalent to Demoralizing Shout. They also get Occult Poison. Behaves exactly like Deadly Poison, but also increases non-physical damage 2% per application to a max of 10% bonus damage. Deadly Brew will also apply Occult Poison in place of Deadly Poison if you know Occult Poison. The tooltip has been updated to reflect this new interaction. Shadow Step is also no longer on the global cooldown. So for Shaman, the intellect to attack power conversion from mental dexterity has been reduced to 65%, down from 100%. The attack power to spell damage conversion from I'm actually starting to glitch out myself now, so that's been reduced to 20%, down from 30%. Mental dexterity no longer grants any bonus healing. Maelstrom weapon reduced or instant cast procs may longer be used to cast Chain Heal or Healing Wave with a reduced or instant cast time. Shamanistic Rage is no longer a rune ability and can now be learned as baseline from the skill book. Shamanistic Rage also now grants 10% of mana, down from 20. Burn now grants 2 spell damage per level, down from 4, and there's a new rune that's been put in place of Shamanistic Rage called Greater Ghostwolf. Ghostwolf is now usable indoors and reduces all damage taken by 10% while active. Fortunately, Warlock didn't get many changes, the changes that they desperately need. Demonic Grace is no longer on the global cooldown. That's it. Warrior have also received quite a lot of changes. So Single-Minded Fury no longer increases damage dealt, but increases movement speed up to 15%. And it also comes with 10% threat reduction. Blood Frenzy has been redesigned, now increases rend damage by 100% and causes rend to gain increased damage equal to 3% of attack power per tick, and rend may be used in any stance. Flagellation has been redesigned. It now causes the warrior to gain rage from physical damage taken as if the warrior was wearing no armor. So basically that just means it's going to give you more rage per damage you take. Rampage has been redesigned, now instantly increases the warrior's attack power by 10% for 30 seconds and no longer stacks or costs rage to activate, but it requires being enraged, 2-minute cooldown. Wrecking Crew now causes an enrage effect that lasts 10 seconds and increases damage done by Mortal Strike, Bloodthirst and Shield Slam by 10%, and a threat reduction in Gladiator stance is now 30%, and it was for 10%. Consumed by Rage now activates when exceeding 60 Rage and now only lasts 12 seconds regardless of the number of attacks, but no longer grants a damage bonus. The Booming Voice talent now increases Battle Shout duration by 150% when maxed out and reduces its rage cost by 100%. Commanding Shout's rage cost was removed and its duration was increased to 5 minutes. Recklessness now increases critical strike damage by 50% instead of 100%. The duration is reduced down to 12 seconds, but the cooldown is now 5 minutes. By the way, it doesn't matter if it's been reduced to 50%, it's basically going to be 100% with world buffs. Retaliation and Shield Wall have had their cooldowns reduced to 5 minutes instead of half an hour. A new baseline ability has been added to the spellbook, which is called Meat Hook, and it's basically a death grip, which is weird, but it costs 15 rage and has 30 yards on a 35-second cooldown. And the last change is a general change to all tanking classes. They will now gain additional damage output benefit from their defense skill in some way. In this phase, we're also going to get 2 new rune slots on the ring and the cloak. Now the cloaks have 3 new runes, and then the rings, well, that's a little bit different. What they essentially are is runes that increase your weapon skill or your chance to hit with a particular spell school by 6%, and it's different depending on your class, obviously, what weapon skills that they can learn and what spell schools that they can cast. So now every race can benefit from the increased weapon skill to reduce the chance of glancing blows, and every caster will be able to reach that hit cap much easier because the bonus is 6% hit. If you found the information useful so far, guys, please do me a solid and subscribe to the channel. I actually do have a little sneaky guide for subscribers only that you can check out, which essentially allows you to push the graphics of the classic client beyond ultra settings. You may find that interesting. Just check out my subscriber only video after you have subscribed on my channel page. Now let's go through these new back runes, firstly beginning with the Druid. So we now have improved Swipe, which is a massive damage buff and allows it to attack every single nearby enemy, so it's 250% weapon damage and generates 1 combo point on your current target. We also now get Tree Form, which is great, and we're also going to get Starfall. Hunters get improved Volley, it's going to reduce the mana cost of Volley and resets its cooldown. Well, basically it's going to have no cooldown and you suffer no pushback when you're casting it. And it also deals 3% of your ranged attack power as additional damage each time it deals damage. Resourcefulness reduces the mana cost of your traps by 100% and their cooldowns by 40%. And then you've got Hit and Run. You gain 50% increased movement speed 4 seconds after using Raptor Strike. Mage are going to get Arcane Barrage and Frozen Orb. And they also get something new called Overheat. Fire Blast can now always be a critical strike and it can be cast while you're casting another spell. And is not affected by the global cooldown. This is a bit of a weird one. So you can be casting something like a Fireball, but also cast Fire Blast exactly at the same time. I've never seen anything like this in World of Warcraft before. It's quite cool. Protection Paladins get their new iconic ability, Shield of Righteousness. Their new runes are Vindicator. When your Vindication talent is triggered, it also decreases the target's attack power by 40 per talent point and increases your strength, agility, and attack power by 5% per talent point. And we also have Righteous Vengeance. When you deal a crit with Judgment, Crusader Strike, or Divine Storm, you're basically going to deal 30% additional damage until it is cancelled. Priests are now going to get Binding, Heal, and Vampiric Touch. And the new thing, although it isn't actually new, it's Soul Warding, but if you didn't already know, because not many people use this in Wrath of the Lich King, saying that, it's actually totally different to how it was in Wrath of the Lich King. So basically, Power Word Shield has no cooldown. It costs 50% less mana, gains 50% extra base value, and gains an additional 50% of a healing power. I thought it was going to be the speed, movement speed increasing thing, which is a bit of a letdown, to be honest. Rogue are now going to get Fan of Knives, and it's exactly how it is in Wrath, basically. There might be some minor changes, but yeah, it's not a finishing move or anything. You can just use it as long as you have 50 energy. They also get a new thing called Blunderbuss. You fire a musket blast up to 4 enemies in a cone in front of you for physical damage. And it looks like they're getting a new AoE finishing move called Crimson Tempest, and this is going to be based on combo points, and it's basically going to be very similar to Rupture, but it leaves Rupture on nearby targets. It also actually benefits from every talent that boosts the damage or modifies Rupture. Shaman are going to get Feral Spirit, obviously the cooldown, but they get an enhancement. Storm, Earth and Fire is a new rune, reduces the cooldown of Chain Lightning by 100%, causes your Earthbind totem to root targets for 5 seconds when cast, and increases periodic damage done by Flame Shot by 60%. We also get Coherence, causes your Chain Heal effectiveness to only reduce by 35% per jump, and Chain Lightning effectiveness to only reduce by 20% per jump, and it also jumps to 1 additional target. Warlock have 3 totally new things. Well, Decimation technically isn't new because it's a Demonology talent in Wrath. But anyway, so your Soulfire no longer has a cooldown when the target is below 35% health. But you will have to weave it with Shadowbolt, Shadowcleave or Incinerate because it only becomes available after you've cast those abilities, the reduced cast time. There's also Mark of Chaos. After you use Shadowburn, your next single target non-parodic spell has 100% increased crit strike. And we also get Infernal Armor. Your spirit becomes infused with demonic energy, reducing all magic damage you take by a percentage equal to your physical damage reduction from armor, and it lasts 10 seconds. Warrior are going to get Sudden Death and Shockwave, but their new thing is Fresh Meat. Damaging a target with Bloodthirst has a 100% chance of first time and a 10% each subsequent time to enrage you, and you deal 10% increased physical damage for 12 seconds. And those are all the new runes, but what's also new is the 0.5 dungeon sets have been totally reworked for different specs and also recoloured. They are very likely going to be pre-based just because of how powerful those set bonuses are. For instance, the Warrior Valor set now also grants 10 rage on top of its heal, and now the Mage set has a chance to, well actually it used to have a chance to freeze targets in place, but now it grants you 30 mana, and the stats have also been dramatically boosted on these sets. There's a lot of base crit chance and base spell hit chance, for instance. And the same goes for the tier 1 sets. There's now a viable version for every spec in the game. It'll also be interesting to see if they do get a colour rework. For instance, the Warlock set now grants 50% more mana on life taps, and the 6 set bonus causes Nightfall to have an increased chance to trigger, but also now Immolate has a chance to grant you Fire Trance to make your Incinerate or Immolate an instant cast. Mages can become immune to all damage when channeling Evocation, and Balanced Druid get a 50% cooldown reduction on Starfall. I'll have a link to all of these in the description because there's quite a lot to go through and we've already gone through quite a lot of information already. Now the test boss dropped a placeholder quest item that hints about ASHBRINGER, but as you can see, it is more of a joke from the devs. Totally real, not fake quest starter item for ASHBRINGER quest, super duper real, totally not a joke. I mean, the devs always make jokes like this to get people talking, and it doesn't really seem out of place that there would be a quest chain for ASHBRINGER added to Season of Discovery, because it was heavily hinted in the original vanilla, and it feels like they just ran out of time to do it because they decided to release TBC instead. There was a lot of extra content that was going to be implemented into the game in the original vanilla, but instead obviously they decided to take a different business model and release a new expansion. Interestingly, it's been data mined that the Drakefire Amulet is bind on account. This will likely mean that the Onyxia attunement will be account-wide, so that you won't have to do it on alts. Attunements are great things to do in the game, that journey and adventure that you go and experience to get ready for a raid, but having to do them on multiple alts was very irritating, especially when Onyxia is just one boss. It's confirmed that the endgame dungeons will have new dungeon loot, and also a few surprises, so who knows what that could be. Maybe it's going to be new baseline abilities learned from books, like in Phase 2 with, Skeleton Monastery dropping all these kind of things. Will Warlocks get stuff like Demonic Gateway? Who knows? Sulfuras has also been totally reworked so that it's viable for Feral Druids because it increases the attack power while equipped, and the top end damage has also been increased, along with the AoE fire effect. We already knew about this, but priests are now able to choose their priest racial, so now Horde can take advantage of things like Fear Ward. This, along with the weapon spec runes, really makes the factions a lot more balanced, but to be honest, it might just mean that Horde are going to pull ahead, but who knows. Some new epic rings have also been data mined. Some of them look pretty powerful, to be honest, and even though not all of them have the class restriction on them, it's very obvious that they are going to be class-specific rings, which leads me to believe that they're very likely going to be from the Blood Moon PvP event. There's also a totally new axe model in the game, and it does look a lot like the axe of Cenarius. This is a weapon that is quite important in the lore of World of Warcraft. Scenarios basically created it for this orc dude who slapped Sargeras in the face of it. It's heavily related to the Emerald Dream, so maybe it's going to be something to do with nightmare incursions, but it will be a very bad move for Blizzard to add a legendary in the game that you need to farm from nightmare incursions, but we will see. Speaking of nightmare incursions, they have been reworked into daily quest hubs now instead. So Season of Discovery population really did drop off a cliff last month. The content drought was insane, especially as the new raid was basically a mini 30-minute raid for most guild groups. If the only endgame PvE content you have is a 30-minute raid, then, don't be surprised when people stop playing the game, especially when you release Cataclysm Classic. For me personally, there's enough going on here to make me want to return to Season of Discovery to give it a go. It's mainly because they're actually doing something with the endgame raid content. Molten Core is getting a new difficulty mode. But if Molten Core is going to release exactly how it did in the original vanilla with just some increased, health values and damage values, then honestly I'm probably going to get bored of that in 2 to 4 weeks. If Molten Core was releasing exactly how it did originally with absolutely no changes, I wouldn't even touch the game, despite all of these new bells and whistles. I'm hoping for a rework on the level as the previous raids, so new boss fights, reworked bosses, new loot tables. Realistically, if they don't do something quite drastic with Molten Core and give it a new polish of paint, then most people are just going to go back to playing Cataclysm or Era after a couple of weeks. Let's hope that that's not the case, because I do still believe that Season of Discovery is the version of the game that has the most potential to grow the Classic WoW audience. Classic WoW desperately needs a new creative and original direction for it to go down, because the whole business model of just re-releasing all of the expansions, well, that's not a good direction to go down, because a big portion of the Classic WoW community don't want to get involved with that. Many have already jumped ship with Cataclysm, decided to quit the game, and some people are even going back to play Classic Era. It'll be interesting to see how Season of Discovery Phase 4 shapes up and where it goes in the future, and whether a lot of people do actually return to the game with this phase, and the population starts growing again. Because a lot of people, most people who have SOD fans basically have a sentiment that, yeah, it peaked in Phase 1 and 2, mainly Phase 1, and it's just gone downhill from there, which is a shame. I honestly think I had more fun in Season of Discovery than I ever did for the entirety of Wrath of the Lich King. But anyway guys, that's where I'm going to leave it there. My name is Matty Goblin, until my next video, ciao.